So, why do I hate exam season? Because you don't get a chance to do the stuff you want to do, which includes, of course, parts number 6 and 7 of the MESHUGGAH discography series. But I thought I'd get back into that now, despite it being exam season, because it's been probably about a month since I did part 6. 5 even. So I thought today we'd have a look at Kolosss, which is from 2012. And before I really go into the music with this, I thought I'd talk about the different versions that you can get this in. And obviously, like what you'd expect, you'd get the dual case edition, like your standard plastic case, and you get that with pretty much every album. But I decided to pre-order the special edition, which comes in this really thick case, which is pretty cool, and like a fold-out kind of mini-sized gatefold kind of cover, which has a DVD as well as the album, and this little section here for the lyric book. And this lyric book has some insane art in it. It's just absolutely incredible. I'll have to unfold it. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this because of the reflection of the light, but and because it's bent as hell. But this is some insane artwork, and I might even put this up as a poster at some point, maybe when I go to uni or whatever. And that is one of the reasons why I love physical music so much. You can't get this with digital. You don't get this awesome like aesthetic with digital music. So physical is definitely the way to go, but that's a topic for another video, I suppose. Right, Kolosss 2012. This was a very highly anticipated release, I must say. The first time I heard about this was probably about March in 2011. And it was an interview, I think, with Jens Kidman and Martin Hagstrom, or however you pronounce his name, sorry if I got it wrong. And they were originally thinking for an autumn release around about November or October, November of 2011, but it got pushed back, of course, to March 2012, and that may have been because of touring schedules and not being able to have enough time to get an adequate result in the studio, possibly, which was also the case with Nothing from 2002. So it's fair enough that they wanted to spend a bit more time to get it right, because as it was like sort of seen afterwards, they wanted to do a remastered copy of Nothing, which I personally think is better than the original, so it's good that bands sometimes do that, and I think that's really cool. I think Whitechapel's done that recently with their first album, so it is very obvious that you do get better results, like the more time you spend and more time you dedicate to the production quality, which, even though the music is the most important part, obviously, the production really does help with it, and this shows through on certain songs on this album. But in terms of music, I will have to say that there are some strong songs amidst some weaker songs, so almost similar to Chaosphere from 1998, but personally, I think this is a little bit more disappointing in terms of the balance, but that's just me. But I'll tell you as best as I can why I think that is. I mean, I Am Colossus, the opening track, is one of the stronger songs on this album, and I personally think that for MESHUGGAH this is one of the best opening songs on one of their albums. It is just such a powerhouse, it is brilliant. I love how simple it is, but how kind of tribal it sounds. It's like a good, interesting kind of mix, and while it sounds simple, there is sort of like a revolving rhythm that goes on, which is quite typical of their music, but it works really well and makes it sound really, really dark, which is just fantastic. And for some reason, on this album, I find the vocals on this particular song a bit more guttural and a bit more evil sounding, if you will, compared to the other songs on this album and previous albums. It's a bit more of a low register, I find, than some of the other songs. And I personally love that. I'm a big fan of like low vocals, and this song is just absolutely awesome. It's like brimming with, I don't know, evil maybe, but that's one way of looking at it. And also the lead on this album, the lead kind of solo section in the middle, which is just like a collection of like bent notes, that just works so well with this song. This really slow, kind of sludgy, like nasty sound, and it's a really ambient kind of aspect, which makes it really good. And that's obviously an aspect that MESHUGGAH have always had. You hear that on all their previous albums, especially on, I don't know, Obzen, with clean sections on various songs on that album. So that's an aspect that isn't lacking and has definitely not sort of like withered away over the years. They still have that, it's still very strong. Another very, very good song on this album is Do Not Look Down, which I think is the third song on this album, and it's one of the singles or songs that was released like before this album came out. And that has one of the strongest leads or solo sections that I've heard in Meshuggah's music. That is absolutely fantastic. It's really powerful. So I'd highly recommend you go listen to that song if you haven't heard this album before. And the actual rhythms and like riffs that happen in that song, they are very reminiscent of older Meshuggah with the way in which they revolve, like I've talked about in previous reviews. So that's a very good song. It's sort of like a throwback to a lot of like their previous albums, while still like maintaining like a modern sound. And that sort of leads me on to a point which isn't so good about this album, this modern sound and the production quality. On this album, I feel it's a bit hit and miss. I don't know how this has happened. There are some songs where the production is very, very good, and then there are some songs where it's piss poor, in my opinion. But it's all down to the listener again. But I'll try and tell you why. On I Am Colossus and Do Not Look Down especially, and even songs like Marrow and Demiurge, the ones that are really heavy, the ones that are sludgy as hell, that you're going to remember, they have really, really good production quality. Like the bass is really powerful, but it's not overbearing, and all the instruments seem to sit right in the mix, and like there's no fighting going on. There's like no like guitar saying, "Hey, drums, fuck off! I've got the centre of the stage here," kind of thing. Even though that's quite a crude kind of example of how to look at it. Anyway, there are songs on here though that are quite poor in terms of the production. I mean, The Demon's Name is Surveillance and The Hurt That Finds You First especially. I don't know what happened. I feel that the drums and the guitars are fighting in this mix, and it makes it quite painful to listen to be quite honest, and I don't know how this happened amidst some stronger songs on here, but that's how I see it anyway. It's a bit of a shame, especially the drums as well. Like the bass drum almost sounds like a vacuum. It's like someone's arsehole like puckering up. It's really fucking weird, but that's a bit of a shame. That was one of like the biggest letdowns, how the production is sort of like hit and miss, like I said, and it goes to show that it does sort of detract a bit from the music, even though of course the music's the most important part. But that was a bit of a shame. Plus, I feel that these songs as well are a bit more lackluster. The actual music itself, especially The Demon's Name is Surveillance. That song to me just seems to be a bit of a show of technicality and show of speed, which I personally don't think is the best way to approach music. I don't know if that was a conscious decision or whatever when they were writing this song, but I personally feel that it's just like being technical and fast for the sake of being technical and fast, and I don't like the way that it's so kind of unrelenting the whole way through. You get like the double bass like the whole way through, and while double bass is very, very good and is obviously like a big part of like extreme metal, sometimes there can be a bit of an overkill, and that's where some bands are let down. Now that's never been a problem with Meshuggah before, not even on songs like Bleed where it's unrelenting. I mean, I guess that's because it's a bit more of like a broken up syncopated beat, but on this it's just constant I think they're 16th note triplets or whatever, just all the way through pretty much, and that can get a bit painful as well as the production quality. But that aside, there are still some very good parts in this album. Like I said, the strong kind of production quality and strong kind of musical structures that happen, especially on I Am Colossus and Do Not Look Down, they make it very, very powerful. And another couple of good examples of this would be on Swarm and Demiurge, two of the later songs on this album. I especially like Swarm, so I'll talk about that. It starts off sounding as if it's going to be like in a 6/8 or 6 kind of feel, the way that it kicks off. But then when like the real drums and like the snare kicks in, you hear it's like a very nice kind of cross rhythm going on, and I absolutely love that. It is just absolutely brilliant, and you have to sort of like really listen to it from the beginning to see how it kicks in. So that was really good to listen to. Demiurge is probably my favourite on the album, So definitely go listen to that. That is an absolute powerhouse. And the reason why is because of this particular riff that happens. I think it's about about 2 minutes in maybe, where all hell breaks loose. It is just absolutely awesome. It's one of the heaviest things that you'll hear in Meshuggah. So that's a song that I definitely recommend you listen to. I Am Colossus is definitely one to listen to. Do Not Look Down is definitely one to listen to. But yeah, that's pretty much what I think of this album. It's a mixture, which is a bit of a shame. I would definitely have to give this album a 6, maybe like a light 6 out of 10, unfortunately. And hey, not everyone's going to agree, but I know like some of my friends absolutely love this album, but I feel it's a bit of a disappointment. And just to sort of like end this off, I'll talk about the last song, like the last vigil. Even though this is a very nice, like clean song with some nice kind of swirling guitars that sort of layer over each other with the delay that sort of like intermingle with each other, and that's another like kind of aspect of Meshuggah's music which isn't lacking. Maybe it's a little too late on the album to really like make up for some of the songs on this album, but all this is just my opinion. You may love this album, and that's absolutely fine. There are certainly some good songs on here. I will be doing Contradictions Collapse next time, and I will see you next video.